Well, thank you everybody for coming here, and especially the committee for inviting me. You know, this is my first time to actually do a workshop, even though it's been a few years here, not here, but in NA, and a little bit nervous about speaking in front of a group of people, but I know that my higher power will give me the words that I need to say, not only for myself, but for anybody in here that needs to hear some or all of what I have to say. And as my wife reminded me yesterday when she was sharing that, you know, I want to make it clear that I'm going to be speaking from my own personal experience, strength and hope, and hopefully it'll align as well as I'm capable of aligning to a clear Narcotics Anonymous message, but it is just my message, so don't judge NA as a whole by what I have to say. When I arrived here Friday, I was invited, asked if I was interested in speaking on any of the different workshops that were open, and after hearing the list of them a second time, I decided and went ahead and settled on this particular workshop. And the topic kind of had me wondering exactly what the committee had in mind when they chose it, because there's a couple different ways that, at least in my experience, it could be interpreted. Life after death. In my experience, I have, experienced the loss of a very close loved one before I got into the program, and the loss of, I would say, a loved one, but not quite as close, after I got in the program because of this disease in and of itself. They were very deep in their use, and even to the point of actually selling too, and they decided to take their own life rather than, accept what they had seen as far as growth in the people that they knew that were working a program. And I seen the devastation and pain that it brought to every member of the family, seeing this person choose to put a gun in their mouth and pull the trigger. And as I stay in this program, I hear and know of people that come to a meeting one day and they don't come back, and you wonder, are they one of the people, since I don't read the obituaries every day, that one of these nameless people that the police find in a gutter somewhere, or are they, in ways in my mind almost worse, just out there using and staying in the misery and the pain? The other way that I was looking at what this topic could mean, life after death, was just my own personal experience as I was introduced to the program. From my earliest childhood memories, basically I felt like a broken person that was unworthy of love, and that was reinforced by siblings that told me that when I was born that my mom didn't want me because I was a boy and she had her heart set on having a little girl, and recounted stories about when the nurse brought me in to my mom, her saying, "Take him away, I don't want him. I wanted to have a little girl." So from stuff like that to when I was in school being labeled as retarded and kind of pushed to the side. At the time when I was going to school, they didn't have the special education programs, etc. So, and even other painful childhood memories, because where I came from, my family was very poor, primarily because my dad, every time he would work a job for a little while, would quit the job and disappear and run off and leave the family stranded. And I have memories of being like 4 years old and going from door to door with a note that my mother wrote, pulling a wagon with my brother that was a year older than me, begging for food. And those sorts of memories kind of motivated me to want to do something different with my life. So as I grew up, even though I struggled with school, I finally, after getting out of high school, went through to college, but I was never really happy. I never really felt like I fit in. with the general population there. So I found myself hanging out with all the people that were using. Those were my friends, the people that I felt the closest to and had, you know, some sort of feeling of family and relationship with. But that wasn't the life that I wanted either, because I was miserable. I saw how miserable they were, and, you know, life had to be better. So I went striving for the American dream, and, you know, married my first wife, had a couple kids, and materially, you know, my higher power was pretty good to me, but my relationship with my first wife just wasn't what I wanted, what I needed. And, you know, as I recounted my experience with my first wife to my wife now, you know, I told her that before I discovered recovery, and recovery was introduced to me by my wife. You know, she let me know that I didn't have to be miserable anymore, that life could be better. And I was introduced to her when I was probably at my very bottom of my experience, and I tend to be a little bit of emotional, so if I mumble a little bit or some tears flow, be understanding. But basically, and I guess that's part of the reason why I took this topic, you know, it was the death of my first wife that led me into recovery. And then I knew how miserable I was, and that I was either going to end my life, and I contemplated it many times over the years up to that point in my life, because I just was so miserable. But people had told me before, one person had told me before, and it kind of stuck in my mind, that suicide was a permanent solution for a temporary problem. But it was hard for me to see at that point, before I knew about NA and knew about recovery, that it was a temporary problem. You know, I was so miserable with my first wife that I contemplated having affairs on the side. You know, I would isolate myself away from the family and go downstairs and in the basement, be on the computer, you know, in chat rooms, etc. Behaviors that I knew weren't right, but I was trying to do what I had to do to survive. And I thought at one point in my marriage, when my two daughters were, one was an early teenager and the other one was, you know, about 8 or 9, that, you know, my wife had been suffering from a chronic illness, and she had suffered from kidney failure, basically. So I thought, when the doctor asked me if I could donate a kidney, that would be an opportunity for me to get her health in a better shape, and maybe then she would love me the way that I wanted to and needed to be loved, and that she'd have the energy to be able to go out and do stuff with me and be willing to hire a babysitter to stay with the kids or whatever if necessary. And that was, you know, I didn't recognize it then, but after I got into recovery, I realized what I was trying to do is fix somebody else. And now, after getting into the program, I realized that it's hopeless fixing anybody else, because this big hole that I was trying to fill with substances, material things, and people can't be filled with anything other than by me with some sort of spiritual program like NA. So after the doctors finally approved for her to receive my kidney, you know, her health improved for a short period of time, but after about 5 years she started getting, you know, chronically ill, getting pneumonia, etc. And, you know, it got to the point where after about 7 years after the transplant, that she was sitting in a hospital room on a respirator, and basically all of her organs were starting to shut down. And I had to make the decision to tell the doctor to go ahead and pull the plug. And again, because I didn't understand recovery, I had no idea what it was, I felt guilty. It was my responsibility that she had chosen to work in an environment where she was exposed to children sneezing and coughing all the time, and as an aide in a first grade class, I took it on my shoulders that, I knew she was sick for a couple of weeks, but yet I didn't make her go to the doctor and then the hospital. I felt guilty because she was on anti-rejection drugs, and I didn't tell the doctors there in the hospital that should have known on their own that, hey, we need to monitor her anti-rejection medication levels in her blood to make sure that, because now she's laying in a bed instead of up and around, that those could build up and actually cause additional problems. So when she finally passed, I had all this guilt. And because she had been chronically ill, at this time I had a 17 and a 13-year-old. Because she'd been chronically ill, I had done a lot of stuff around the house. And everything from doing all the laundry to most of the vacuuming and cleaning and some fraction of the cooking. And because I had a fairly decent job, my girls really didn't want for anything. So at the point when my first wife died, first off, there was a great deal of resentment toward me being the one parent that was left because of my relationship and my bad feelings towards them, because I blamed them in a way for my declining relationship with my wife. So I didn't really have a good father-daughter relationship with them because I'd isolated for so long. At that point, when my first wife died, I couldn't take the chaos anymore. At this point, I tried to impose some structure on my kids that they never really had. Asked them to actually do the dishes themselves or clean up after themselves, so that when I came home from work that, I wouldn't have to do dishes before I cooked dinner, then I have to do dishes again afterwards. And they got angry at me saying I wanted a clean house. It was more important than, loving and caring for them. And it was a real struggle for me. And at that point is where one night several weeks after my first wife died, I was sitting in my basement. This behavior that I had, started years before that, miserable as hell. And I was sitting watching the goings on in a chat room. And I saw this one person not saying anything in the chat room, while all these other people in the room were dogging everybody else. Somebody would leave the room and they'd say all kinds of, messages about how terrible that person was, or who they were sleeping with, or whatever, how slutty they were. And so I saw this person whose screen name was Nancy and what looked like a date. And I don't remember for the life of me what I instant messaged this person, but I was so miserable and I was just reaching out. And lo and behold, it was somebody that my higher power had led me to. She happens to be sitting there right there right now, and I'm gonna borrow some water so I can kind of clear my throat. So, at this point in my life, I was at the very bottom. I had not only experienced the physical death of loved ones, I had contemplated taking my own life because I was so miserable and I didn't see any way out. So, for whatever reason, I sent this instant message to this person. And the funny thing is they were at the point of just getting ready to shut down their computer when this instant message flashed up. And they answered me back, and again, I don't remember how the conversations went. But after a back and forth that lasted, I believe, several hours that night, the next night, went online again, saw the same person. And this goes on for several days, and after a while, this person gets tired of typing, which is kind of amazing that she gets tired of typing before me because I'm such a klutzy typist. So she violates all the rules that you're supposed to follow when you talk to people online and sends me her phone number. So I call her up, and her and I talk, and I have this connection. And part of it, the reason why I was reaching out that way for somebody to talk to, is the few people that I had that I thought were friends also knew my kids, and I didn't want to feel like I was dogging my kids to somebody and running them down, but I needed to vent about how they were treating me and how I was hurting. And so after a while of conversations back and forth on the computer, then we started calling and talking back and forth, and I found out that she belonged to this group or organization called Narcotics Anonymous. And my perspective was, I was in a way kind of shocked and scared, because my perception of drug addicts were, not the people that I knew that were using, not myself, but people shooting up in alleys. All the people that I knew for the most part that were still alive that hadn't overdosed or something or wound up dying of AIDS were, employed and, or going to school or in some way not what society typically had taught me to think of as a drug addict. And I went and I don't remember how it actually happened, but we arranged to meet at her house where she was living with her sister. And I was so terrified, that I asked and again, I wasn't looking for some sort of romantic relationship. I was just looking for a friend that I could talk to, independent of these other people that were around me that I had previously thought of as my friends, because, somebody with an outside open perspective. So I asked my oldest daughter to go with me, and we went over to her house where she was living with her sister. And I think she was a little concerned too, but she had a fairly large dog and a baseball bat. And, as she tells the story, when I came over there, I talked a little bit, but her and my daughter probably talked in ways more than I did. And I sat on the couch away from everybody, so nervous I was flipping, fidgeting with my pants, not even realizing that I had, this nervous behavior. And she was over there, as I learned later, thinking, okay, is he a pervert? Let's see where his hands go. If they go to his crotch, I'll grab the bat and hit him over the head and get him out the door, or some such thing. So little by little, our relationship continued to grow. She introduced me to NA. I think my first experience with NA was when she asked me to come to the Rock River Area Convention just a little bit over 6 years ago. And by then, I was kind of falling in like with this person. Actually, at that point, I had gotten beyond falling in like with her, and I think I'd actually, because it was after April, I had actually told her I loved her and asked her to marry me. And that was a strange experience too, because at that time, it was April 1st at midnight, or just after midnight, so it was actually April 2nd, I realized that, hey, I had fallen in love with this woman that God brought into my life, and that was starting to introduce me to spiritual principles, some of which were related to the fact that I wasn't a piece of garbage, that nobody in this world is a piece of garbage to be thrown away, and that I deserved love and respect from not only the people around me, my kids, especially in my own home, but I, thanks to her, learned to love and respect myself. My first step toward, realizing that I was a worthwhile person, that I could change my life, and that I could truly be happy. So, after several, weeks, like I said, our relationship continued to grow, but I never really saw myself as an addict. That's part of the reason why, even though I have more than 6 years clean, this is my first time getting up and speaking in front of a group of people. Because my first direct experience with recovery was in other programs where I was seeking people like myself, where I could, have a program where I could go through that spiritual growth, find life after basically a death of my spirit. And none of the other programs, though they were welcoming, there weren't people there like me. I didn't find what I needed. So finally, I had for years been hanging out with the Narcotics Anonymous crowd and even attending lots of NA meetings, but everybody knew just to pass over me at the meetings because addicts can't share. And I was afraid of rejection, so I never was able for my first couple of years around NA to identify myself as an addict. And about 3 years ago now, my wife had gone through some major surgery, and I had walking pneumonia, and some friends were bringing a meeting to our house. And after discussing this with several of my close NA friends, I asked one of them if they would be my sponsor and told them that I couldn't find what I needed elsewhere. This was my home. And since then, my life has continued to grow and get better. In fact, this year, I have already done a couple of things that I, from a fairly young person on, had always told myself I would, I wanted to do and would do. And I have one thing, that is coming up in September that for probably more than 20 years I've had always wanted to do, but I never valued myself enough to indulge myself to do that. My wife and I are going to go on a cruise in Alaska, in a land tour, and spend 2 weeks in Alaska. And it's just been a wonderful experience and trip learning this program and being a part of this fellowship. With that, I'll let my co-speaker.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm an addict. My name's Mark. And, man, like they said at Woodstock, man, this is like my second gig, and I'm scared shitless, you know. I'm very nervous, and I hope to God that this nervousness before I speak never goes away, because I will convince myself at that point that I've arrived, and at that point I'm in deep shit. I want to thank Mark for tricking me into this. I'm still not good at volunteering. I love Camp Mac. I love being here, and this place, it never ceases to amaze me. That was an amazing story, man. That was amazing. I looked at this topic. Well, I was given this topic, and life after death. And I want to say this. The name of my home group is Second Chances. And that's what, if you're sitting in this room and you ain't using no dope today, thank you. You have experienced a second chance. We are doing another life. And Robert was sharing on that earlier, man, what is new to us. You know? I'm not living a natural life right now. Now, my true spirit, I guess, I mean, people say this, and maybe, I haven't really felt that yet. But they say that when we get clean, man, our true spirit starts coming out, and our true spirit starts coming alive. But, oh wow, man, maybe I just flashed on that. The true nature of what I do is usually in conflict with the true spirit, okay? Thank you, higher power. Because all the practicing I did on this talk today, man, them words never came, okay? So, I'm kind of down with that right now. I was gonna write, but then I thought, why should I change, you know? So like I did read though, you know, and that's a lot of my program, a lot of what I do for me in my recovery is reading, and I'm a firm believer in the literature of Narcotics Anonymous. I'm an addict. These books were written by us. They're for us. They're about us. And so I started. I'm going to try to dip into the death part a little bit first before I go into the life. And I'm gonna. I don't know where the fuck I'm gonna go, but I know I'm gonna trip into the death part first. So I got the death part out of the basic text. And I've kind of like tried to put this together pretty much the way I put my recovery together. I just kind of highlighted the words I like, and I'm not disregarding the rest right now. But you know, I might get back to some of that later. But I'm gonna do a little bit of reading, and probably a little bit of talking. We are people in the grip of a continuing and progressive illness whose ends are always the same: jails, institutions, and death. Most of us did not consider ourselves addicted before coming to the Narcotics Anonymous program. The information available to us came from misinformed people. As long as we could stop using for a while, we thought we were all right. We looked at the stopping, not the using. As our addiction progressed, we thought of stopping less and less. Only in desperation did we ask ourselves, could it be the drugs? To me, there's two gifts there. The the gift of desperation, and the fact that sometimes I still get information from misinformed people. But without, see, I have to get to the death for me before I get to the living, because if I think that I'm doing all right, which I do, I think I'm doing all right, it tells me there. I'm not looking at the drugs, I'm not looking at the stopping, I'm not looking at the using, I'm looking at the stopping. You know, as long as I can stop, I'm all right. You know, I don't, so my thinking ain't right yet, okay? So I'm still in the whole death trip. One aspect of our addiction was our inability to deal with life on life's terms. We tried drugs and combinations of drugs to cope with a seemingly hostile world. We dreamed of finding a magic formula that would solve our ultimate problem, ourselves. The fact was that we could not use any mind-altering or mood-changing substance, including marijuana and alcohol, successfully. Drugs ceased to make us feel good. When I reached that point, I was still saying, well, they're ceasing to make me feel good, but it must be a problem with what I'm doing, you know. So here comes the combinations. I'll be the mixologist, you know. If that didn't work, maybe this will. Or of course, in the misinformed people I hung out with, you're always hearing of something that Slick's got up the street, you know. And don't do too much of that. Okay, how much is too much? I just want enough, you know. So that's, I mean, you know, this is all in Who is an Addict. This is where it is for me right now. So we were constantly searching for the answer, that person, place, or thing that would make everything all right. We lacked the ability to cope with daily living. As our addiction progressed, many of us found ourselves in and out of institutions. These experiences indicated that there was something wrong with our lives. We wanted an easy way out. Some of us thought of suicide. Our attempts were usually feeble and only helped to contribute to our feelings of worthlessness. We were trapped in the illusion of what if only, and just one more time. When we did seek help, we were only looking for the absence of pain. Wow. There's, you know, there I am on that dying thing, man. I'm not, you know, I do that in my recovery. I'll seek help. Just, I really, you know, am I seeking help or am I trying to draw you into my chaos? There is a bit of difference there, you know. There is a bit of difference. Sometimes I just want you to feel as bad as I feel, and I don't want to do nothing about it. You know, I don't want to do nothing about it. I just want you to feel as bad as I feel. So, I'm like, I still suffer from that, but I'm trying. At first, we were using in a manner that seemed to be social, or at least controllable. We had little indication of the disaster that the future held for us. At some point, our using became uncontrollable and antisocial. This began when things were going well, and we were in situations that allowed us to use frequently. This was usually the end of the good times. We may have tried to moderate, substitute, or even stop using, but we went from a state of drug success and well-being to complete spiritual, mental, and emotional bankruptcy. This rate of decline varies from addict to addict. Whether it occurs in years or days, it is all downhill. Those of us who don't die from the disease will go on to prison, mental institutions, and complete demoralization as the disease progresses. The spiral, man. Does the spiral ever go up? I mean, really. In recovery, when I start thinking, I don't ever think butterflies, happy thoughts, tiptoeing through the tulips, man. I'm not thinking like that. I'm thinking bad things. And without you guys, those bad things might turn into action. Okay? And my action ain't going to be good, because I'll go back to that true nature. You know, I'll forget it. The spirit just goes. If I don't stay connected here, I'm toast. I'm toast. I accept that all the way, man. But see, in reading all these words and all these thoughts and all these concepts of going about death, I'm not thinking that's me. That's you. That's going to happen to you. I'm all right. What happened last time was the moon was full. And I didn't eat, man. And the boss was on my ass. And so next time, I need to hit the drive-thru first, Shit, the only reason I hit the drive-thru first was throw a goddamn cheeseburger on the seat so when I run out of dope, at least I had some damn food, man. I'll have to do that today. I don't. And that's not... How the hell did I get to the life, How did I get there? I didn't do it. I certainly didn't do it. I don't know. But here's part of the hope. And it's still in that same chapter, man. The only alternatives... Oh, no, I flipped this around. The only alternatives to recovery are jails, institutions, dereliction, and death. Unfortunately, our disease makes us deny our addiction. If you are an addict, you can find a new way of life through the NA program. We have become very grateful in the course of our recovery. Through abstinence and through working the 12 steps in Narcotics Anonymous, our lives have become useful. Now, before all that, there's these little words that they're italicized, and these little words give me some hope too. And these little words say, we cannot change the nature of the addict or addiction. We can help to change the old lie, once an addict, always an addict, by striving to make recovery more available. God, help us to remember this difference. And that's what we're doing here, We're trying, I don't know at any given point, on any given date, at any given time, when I'm going to need everything I'm trying to soak up when I walk in these rooms. When I'm going to need all that just to get through the next minute. Because I don't know what the next minute is. I don't know what the next right thing is. I don't know shit, man. But I know that if I come here and I don't use, that I'm going to have a chance of getting out of this whole death thing and getting into some life. So, I got here because of a bet. The people I was hanging with, I don't know, I just heard them talking about it one day, man, I think I need to cut this shit out. And I had been thinking about that, I didn't want to share that with anybody because I might have to look at it. Or they would always say, well, you're not that bad yet. Hey, how about this, man? I'm not that good yet. I haven't done that in my recovery yet. I don't think like that. I think, well, yeah, I ain't done that yet. Maybe I'm not that bad. See, I never want to think about, well, maybe I'm not that good. What happened was the chick lost the bet, and she went over, and this was about 6 weeks into the bet. She just come up and threw the 20 on the counter, man, and went and did what she had to do. And I pocketed the 20, won the bet, and I thought, you know what? This was before, you see, you guys were still in a circle, praying my ass up in here. Dumbasses. Why'd you do that? Now you got me, man. I ain't leaving, man. But you all still standing here in that circle. And I pocketed that 20, and I thought, something's different, man. I don't know what it is yet. And it goes back to I know what I used to have. I know what that death thing is. We talk about suicide in these rooms. We better. I've got phone calls. And if you hang around here long enough, you'll get them too. Because we put ourselves out there. I've got phone calls from people with 25 years telling me about the rope up over the joist in the garage, man, and standing on the chair. And it kills you, man. It's like, what is up? I mean, going to meetings and everything. But that's where we go now. That's where we go. We want to die. There's this other chapter here that called Recovery and Relapse. And see, I'm rewriting a few things here, man. I'm just going to rewrite this line because I think I need to. It says, our relapse may be embarrassing, and something about but come back because you can't save your face and your ass at the same time. Don't let your recovery become so embarrassing that you can't save your face and your ass at the same time. And that's what happens to those of us that get some clean time, man. We start thinking that I can't go in there and say that, man, because I'm like Mr. N.A. and shit, man. And if I say that, man, what are they gonna think of me? You know what? Don't let your recovery become so embarrassing. Don't let it happen, because we hear it in these workshops with people that got clean time, man, the things that they're going through, and that's the hope. They're going through them things, and they're going through them clean, and it's okay. In recovery and relapse, see, now I'm skipping ahead. I missed all the steps and everything, and I'm not downplaying the steps, not at all. I'm talking about some of the death and some of the life. And for recovery and relapse, the death there comes after you've seen some life. Because I can't have recovery and relapse. I can't have a relapse until I get some recovery, okay? So if I'm coming in and I'm still using, I haven't relapsed, okay? I'm still using. So now the drugs get put down, and for whatever reason, we go back out there. And some of the wisdom on that death is in this chapter. And this one says, loneliness will kill us inside, and the drugs that always come next may do the job completely. The symptoms and the feelings that we experienced at the end of our using will come back even stronger than before. This impact is sure to destroy us if we don't surrender ourselves to the NA program. Now, that's where we get back to the life. Okay, it's right there. The NA program is the life. The death is my head, man. My thinking. I got here because of my thinking. I get here, I try to start taking some suggestions. I might even hang with a few musts, and then all of a sudden I think I know. And I don't have to come back no more. And that's where we get in trouble. We can never fully recover, no matter how long we stay clean. Complacency is the enemy of members with substantial clean time. If we remain complacent for long, the recovery process ceases. The disease will manifest apparent symptoms in us. Denial returns along with obsession and compulsion. Guilt, remorse, fear, and pride may become unbearable. And soon we reach a place where our backs are against the wall. Here's the death and life thing. Denial and the first step conflict in our minds. If we let the obsession of using overcome us, we are doomed. Only a complete and total surrender, acceptance of the first step can save us. We must totally surrender ourselves to the program. I need absolute words. I need them. If it said, man, right here, dude, you should think about surrendering yourself to the program. Well, man, you know what? Maybe right here, maybe I shouldn't. That's the way, because maybe you should. I don't think I should. Well, we must totally surrender. There's not a lot of room for negotiation there. Mm-hmm. Okay? I need that, because I want to negotiate. Well, look, man, I'll surrender tomorrow. Today, I got this thing. I got this thing just today. The 12th step, because now I'm really going to skip, man. The 12th step, what's it say there? I should find it in the book, because if I try to think about what it says, I'll probably mess it all up. But it's the second sentence, man, in the 12th step. The last thing we expected was an awakening of the spirit. I'm coming to some life, man. I did not walk into Narcotics Anonymous meeting and say, I can't do this shit no more. hook me up with a spiritual awakening and I'll be straight. I didn't say that at all, man. I said, you know what? I can't do this shit no more. Not the way I'm doing it. I need to learn how to use successfully. That's what I figured I'd do. I'd learn to use successfully. But y'all just said keep coming back. Don't use, no matter what. And I've been lucky enough to, the only thing I've ever done right in this program is to keep coming back and not use. And if I make it to November 15th of this year, I'll celebrate 22 years, okay? Thank you, Narcotics Anonymous. Thank you, Narcotics Anonymous. Thank you, my higher power, okay? Because this life is so wonderful. And when we talk about our loved ones and we just want to give this, man, I just want to give this to the people I see in pain. But what, really, I kind of want to take away your pain. Well, you know what? I ain't that damn powerful. You got to go through your pain. You couldn't take away my pain. You couldn't tell me, and I got to remember that. I got to remember that nobody could tell me shit. And a lot of times they still can't, I'm getting a little bit better with that. At least I'll pretend I'm listening. But I can't take away your pain. I can share my experience, my strength, and my hope. And I got it all right here. I got it here. I didn't get it out there on the street. I didn't get it from going to church. I didn't get it from going to psychiatrists. I didn't get it from any of them places. I got it. I got my hope when the pain got so great that I couldn't do nothing else, that my back was against that wall. And then I remember to surrender. I'm getting a little better now, I try to surrender. I try to work steps in the morning. But then sometimes it becomes like, oh, it's just this automatic thing I got to do. There's days like that, while I'm just doing this thing, and soon, while I'm trying to meditate, I'm already thinking about all the 6 million important things my ass has got to do, and that's when I'm not really doing things very good. But I practice this stuff. I do practice this stuff, and I love this stuff. I love these retreats. I love the conventions, the campouts. I don't go anywhere. I'm even starting, like, I got a library card, man, so I could go get on a computer and type in na.org, okay, and find a meeting and go find addicts. Because, see, I'll get out on the road and I might get a good idea. Man, I'm a long way from home. Nobody knows me here. I bet I could cop. I'll get them good ideas. There's my true nature coming out. But then the spirit comes in and says, there's probably a library, asshole. Go do that .com thing you're always bitching about, man. And so when I'm on the road, see, another thing I do is I stay in, I mean, this is what I do. I don't recommend it to anybody, but if you find yourself doing it, God, I'm sorry, you're as sick as I am. I stay a lot of times in real cheap dive motels, man. But, like, that wasn't part of my using, okay? So now I'm going to justify this shit, all right? But, I mean, it's funny. We'll be in an NA meeting, and we'll talk to people after the meeting, and we'll go, where's the hotels? And they'll say, well, don't stay there. And I say, well, how do I get there? See, I still live like that, man. When y'all told me don't do this, that's the first thing I'm going to do, man. But what I do is I get meeting lists, okay? Because there's some death going on in them hotels, man. It's 3 o'clock in the morning and they're opening them desk drawers looking for them rocks, man. They're looking for that one thing that don't exist. That rock that somebody left behind. And they might find that meeting list that I left in there. They might. I still leave them. I ain't using. I like smiling at them folks in the morning because They usually ain't smiling, man. But I love this life. I truly do. I love this life. I love everything about Narcotics Anonymous. If you're new here and you don't know yet, you don't know, I don't know if I want to do this shit, it's all right, man. It's all right. See, because what we're talking about here is we don't know what's out there for you. Okay? We don't know. I don't know what your yets are. I don't know nothing about that. But you know where you've been. And you know that there's something happening that you got enough sense that you're sitting in here thinking, maybe I need to look at this shit. So maybe you do. And just stick around here. Just stick around here for a while and check us out. And that whole relapse and recovery thing, you know, relapse is not a requirement. There are people that walk in these rooms that never go back out there again. And that's all. And there are people that do go back out there again. The blessing is they come back, okay? So even the ones that go back out there hear something. I can't, you know, they tell me that sitting there with a head full of dope and lines of the basic text coming out at you is a bad son of a bitch, and I gotta believe that, man. I gotta believe that. I hope to God I never find myself there. And that's the life. That's the life. And I hope, my hope for you is that you just stay clean. And when you get some success, and this success is funny for us, man. I remember one of the first successes I experienced was I bought brand new tires for my van, man. Like, I went to a tire store and shit and said, well, what do I know about tires? Michelins, man. Get me some Michelins. You know, I was 35 years old, man. I used to buy tires. I go to the gas station and say, how much you want? Man, you got any tires out there in the pile? You know, because I only got a dime on me and I got to go cop. You know, I can't be buying tires. Shit. Damn thing's flat, though. I can't get to the dope house with a flat tire. So, I don't know. You know, that's just some of the places that we go. So, whatever that success might be, some of us, that success is getting a driver's license, man. You get that back. When the police pull you over, you can show it to them. You know? I can show them my insurance stickers now because I actually bought them from insurance companies, not bike clubs, man. You know, because that's where I used to get them. But, you know, those are the things that happen. And maybe those things won't happen. But you know what does happen? The promise of freedom. The promise of freedom. It's right here. We offer only one promise. And that's freedom from active addiction. And before I got here, I never had that. I never had that. And I'm so grateful to be a part of something that I didn't want nothing to do with when I first got here. So keep coming back, and I love y'all. Thanks.
Somebody got the time? Well, we got a couple minutes. Anybody want to come for a couple minutes? Thank you guys for sharing. Mark, Rich, thanks for coming. We'll see you again next year, I'm sure. I'm sure so. All right.
My name's Rick. I'm an addict. Grateful to be at Camp Mac in recovery-based weekend. Life after death is something I've had a little experience with this year. And the experience was nothing short of miraculous, you know. The basic part of this program that got me through this year is the fact that I've been in meetings when people come in and tell me they've lost a loved one. About 3 years ago, we were at Spirituality Under the Stars, and a real good friend of mine, I pulled up, and all I saw was a stream of people coming and giving my friend a hug, you know. I said, oh, it must be his anniversary. I forgot his anniversary again. And I walk up on him, I said, how you doing? He said, my dad just called me to tell me my mom passed away. You know, hugged and cried for a minute. I said, what you gonna do? How can I help? We're gonna go home? And he said, no. God put me here. I'm gonna stay here. And we spent the rest of that weekend in recovery, celebrating the fact that this man had a place that God put him, you know, and had that ability, you know, to suffer a loss graciously with friends around him, giving him support and love and kindness, you know. And it wasn't about 9 months after that, my mom had signed a no code and her kidneys failed and she passed. And it was about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. My brother, sister, you know, other members of the family, and we're hugging, crying, and more than one of them said they're so grateful and jealous that I had a place to go. You know, because 2 hours after that, I was in my home group, you know, at the most important meeting of NA in my life, only behind my first one, you know. And that was the example this program works. Others have gone before me and set the example, you know, that no matter what in this life, it is life. And that the final part of life is just that. It's the period at the end of the sentence. But it's part of life, you know. And the beauty of this program is that after my mom passed and my dad needed some support, you know, emotionally, spiritually, he had his church, you know, but I was the only family member close. And this guy that, you know, that was one of the things I had to work on in getting into recovery and in the process of getting clean was getting this resentment off me about my dad. You know, we couldn't stay under the same roof for more than 8 hours without shouting at each other about stupid shit, you know. And this man became my best friend. And about this time last year, he was told he had artery condition, you know, aneurysms, multiple, and he was 76, and, you know, he wasn't a candidate for operations. And, you know, we come out of that doctor's office, and I said, how you feel? He says, well, I'm alive today, and that's where I gotta stay. And I kind of joked with him. I says, yeah, it's not everybody that know that it's going to be a bread truck that gets you. What the doctor didn't tell you is what day you were going to step out in front of the bread truck. And that day came about 2 months after that. And the day before, the last time I saw my dad, you know, and I talked to him on the phone the day following, about 2 hours before he passed. But that night, he wouldn't let me go. And he held on to my hand. And he just said, thank you, and I love you. And from that man that 10 years before that I couldn't stand to be in the same room with. And those are the miracles that we get here. And we get them from the experience of others. And we only do that when we share honestly and openly from the heart. I love each and every one of you. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we have this ability to experience each other's depths of emotion, so that when we're faced with that in life, we have a general clue the direction we need to take. And for me, it's right here, and that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you, Rick.
I'm an addict called Matthew. Hi family, I'm grateful to be here today. I just wanted to say, I got a phone call during this that my sponsor, Paul S., just had an accident on his bike. He's okay. First call was bad. The second call was he's up, he's laughing, he's conscious, he's talking. He knows who he is, where he's at. So just if you could have a moment of silence to send some addict love, pray to your God that he's going to be okay. Talk about life and death, all in the blink of an eye can be gone. And sometimes it's just grateful to be able to be aware of that and to appreciate being able to take another breath clean. Thank you.
All right, we'll wrap this up now with a circle and group hug.